Without hesitation, Evelyn charges into the crowd, cutting off the arms of everyone who had mocked Theo. As she does, Theo calls out their names and their family status, making it clear how insignificant they are compared to the power of the Ragnar family. By the end of Evelyn's ruthless spree, Theo's quest progress hits 79%. One man, trembling, grabs onto Axion's pants, begging him to intervene. Axion looks down at him, asking, "Why should I help in the first place? This is merely a greeting." The man, confused, looks back, but before he can say anything else, Evelyn's sword flashes, severing his arm. The man screams in agony on the floor. Evelyn and Axion exchange glances. Axion remarks, "I never expected to see you again like this." Evelyn, calm and collected, replies, "It's been a while." The quest progress hits 82%. Axion observes that Evelyn only targeted those who made comments about the bloodline. Theo had made it clear that even as a fellow successor candidate, not even he could halt Evelyn's actions. Evelyn turns her head toward Theo, reporting, "I have severed the right arms of the 14 individuals you commanded me to." She compliments him, saying, "Good job," and asks for a status update. She informs him that if they hurry to a priest, the arms could be reattached, but their futures as swordsmen would be uncertain. Theo nods, stating, "That is sufficient." Remington, concerned, asks Theo if he is all right. Axion, observing how close both Evelyn and Remington are to Theo, realizes that Theo has truly changed. He is no longer burdened by the title of imbecile. A chuckle escapes Axion, but it quickly turns into deceiving anger, and he expresses his desire to crush Theo even more now. Theo, unfazed, says, "It's time to leave," and both Evelyn and Remington follow him. As Theo walks past Axion, he taps his arm, smirking as he waves goodbye, saying, "I had fun." This final gesture is the last hurdle Theo has to overcome, and his escape from the title of imbecile is now complete. He tells Axion he'll see him later, and a notification appears, declaring the completion of the tutorial quest. Axion, enraged, screams Theo's name as Theo relishes the thought that his quest is finally over. However, he knows this is only the first step toward his true revenge. His rewards include an experience elixir, which will grant him 5 level-ups as long as he remains under level 30. Though there are likely more rewards yet to be revealed, as the sun sets back in the Camellia Palace, Emil is working on some papers. She is visibly shocked by something her attendant has just told her and demands he repeat it. She isn't going to like this, he thinks. The scene shifted to a lively tavern, a stark contrast to the noble banquet they had just attended. Sybil Drea was leading the celebrations, loudly cheering for Theo and his successful debut in society. The trainees were in high spirits, enjoying themselves, and even Theo allowed himself to relax and join in with the revelry. This place felt much more comfortable than the stiff and pretentious noble party. Meanwhile, back in the Camellia Palace, a sharp sound echoed, a slap. It was Emil berating Axion. She furiously demanded to know how he could let that imbecile justify his actions and even allow people's arms to be cut off. Axion, looking to the side, muttered a weak acknowledgement. This only enraged her more. As she shouted that she had warned him repeatedly not to take things lightly, instead of pressuring Theo into submission, he had given him the grounds to act freely. She reminded him that she had already warned him that if Theo stood out, it would make it much more difficult to take control of the Rose Palace. The scene panned to the view of the Rose Palace from their window. Axion tried to reassure her that he would handle it, but Emil wasn't having it. She snapped that she didn't want to hear any more excuses. He needed to reflect on his failure and how he had nearly ruined her meticulously crafted plan. Bitterly, Axion promised to keep that in mind. Emil, fanning herself to cool down, wondered aloud whom Axion took after to be so impulsive. A voice from the shadows responded, Ed. He remarked that Axion resembled her when she was younger. Emil shot him a withering glare, asking if that was supposed to be a joke. Ed, unfazed, advised her not to be too angry. He believed that this incident might not be as terrible as it seemed. Curious, she asked why. Ed explained that since the Rose Palace had once been part of the clan, hence Haram, it had been difficult to claim ownership over it. Though it had fallen out of favor and had become a gathering place for third-rate individuals, it still held the backing of the clan head. To take it over, they needed justification, and Theo's actions at the banquet had provided just that. Ed continued explaining that Theo was slowly becoming the representative of the Rose Palace, and using the incident where he cut off the arms of several people, they could now move forward with legal proceedings to suppress him. Emil, her mood shifting instantly, mused, "I think the reason why I found Theo becoming stronger unsettling was because I feared that their influence would expand if the clan head paid more attention to the Rose Palace. But by using Theo, who has become stronger, if we, the Camellia Palace, use proper legal procedures to sweep them away, the Rose Palace will naturally have no choice but to submit to us, the Troivans. Hence, we can take over the Rose Palace without a sound." She asked Ed how long it would take to set their plan into motion. Ed chuckled, informing her that the preparations were already complete, and by tomorrow morning she would receive some delightful news. He even prepared an aromatic candle from the volcanic region of Akron for her to enjoy a relaxing bath before bed. Their closeness was unsettling, almost inappropriate for siblings. As Emil wrapped her arms around Ed, praising him as always and saying that this was why she adored him so much, the atmosphere was eerily intimate. Back at the tavern, Remington expressed his surprise. He was still in disbelief over how much. Theo had stood up for him. Theo, confused, asked what he was talking about, wondering if Remington had had too much to drink, even though he'd only been sipping orange juice. Remington clarified that he was talking about the banquet. While Remington had been willing to endure the insults aimed at himself, the moment they insulted Theo's friend, Theo had immediately acted without hesitation. Remington admitted he had done nothing to defend himself and found it embarrassing. Looking at Theo, Remington realized how extraordinary he truly was. Despite all the ridicule he had faced for being an untalented, illegitimate child, Theo had grown into a formidable person. Not only that, but even when confronted by enemies, he stood little chance against. He had the courage and resolve to emerge victorious. Theo had gone up against the formidable Camellia Palace, a force that no one else dared to challenge, yet he wielded his sword without hesitation, all for the sake of defending a friend. Using his observational skills, Theo noticed that Remington believed Theo's actions at the banquet were driven by how much he cared for him. Theo, however, told him that he seemed to be misunderstanding something. Remington, ignoring the comment, revealed that although his clan had instructed him to build ties with Axion, he'd had a change of heart. He declared that from now on, he wished to follow Theo instead. The other trainees, witnessing this, got excited, shouting that it was only natural for the strong to recognize strength in others. Theo, still unconvinced, insisted that Remington was misunderstanding things. At that moment, he heard Evelyn's voice in his mind, using telepathy to tell him to just let Remington be. Startled, Theo glanced over at her and saw her smiling. She said it wasn't a bad misunderstanding after all, and perhaps everyone just wanted to get along with him. Theo, surprised, said he really wasn't anyone special, reflecting for a moment. He considered that everything might be because of the message window he had. Whether it was his regression to the past, acquiring Ragnar's talents, or becoming stronger, he couldn't quite pin down what it was. At first, he thought it might be fragments of his regret, but the window was far too detailed for that. A vague sense of déjà vu nagged at him, but he concluded that since it had been helping him, it didn't matter. As the banquet wrapped up, Theo noticed his level had gone up. He realized that each level up granted him stat points that he could allocate however he wanted, allowing him to enhance his abilities at will. He found this both thrilling and frightening, and he got excited at the thought of how powerful he could become. But first, he knew he needed to prepare for the inevitable counterattack from the Camellia Palace. Turning to Remington, he gave him the nickname Remy and said, "Since you've mentioned it, maybe you can help me with something?" Remington, eager, agreed and asked what Theo needed. Before noting how Theo had just called him Remy, Theo pulled out a piece of paper and told him that the battle for the throne between him and Axion was about to intensify. To prepare, he really wanted Remy's help. Remington was taken aback by this, but Theo explained that in the future, Remington would become the head of the Narrow Clan, and their forces would grow strong enough to rival even the Ragnars. Theo added that Remington's strength and leadership were symbolized by this silver lion, and that he hoped to have him on his side. Theo then handed Remington an envelope, saying he really hoped Remy would take it. Still surprised, Remington accepted the envelope and pledged to follow Theo, saying that if there was anything he could do to help, he would. Theo laughed, thanking him. While Remington again pointed out how Theo had called him Remy, just then someone shouted Theo's name from behind the door. The door burst open, and a group of knights entered. Everyone in the room was shocked. The knights, known as the Swords of the Law, essentially medieval night cops, presented Theo with a warrant for his arrest on charges of threat, assault, and intimidation. Evelyn, outraged, demanded to know what nonsense this was, but Theo calmly told her to relax. Walking over to the warrant, Theo noticed the ink was still wet, indicating they were in a rush. Smirking, he told the knights, "I'm ready to go." He extended his wrists for the handcuffs, and the knights secured them with a metallic clink before leading him towards the door. As he was dragged away, Remington's desperate voice rang out. "Theo!" he shouted. Theo turned, a grin spreading across his face, a grin that carried more than just resignation. Evelyn and Theo exchanged a brief look of understanding. This was part of his plan. She then noticed Remington gripping a small piece of paper tightly, something crucial hidden in his hand. Back at the Rose Palace, Cecilia collapsed to the floor, her knees giving way as the news hit her like a crashing wave. "Why have they taken him to the tribunal?" she whispered, her voice trembling with despair. Her butler rushed to her side, concern etched on his face. "My lady, it's because of what happened at the banquet," he explained cautiously. "They're accusing him of inciting rebellion." Cecilia's eyes flashed with disbelief and anger. "How could they think Theo would ever do that?" she asked, her voice rising as she pushed herself to her feet. Her mind raced. "Do they honestly believe they can bring him to trial over this?" she demanded, pacing back and forth. The butler's expression remained grim. "Yes, my lady. The damage was extensive. They say he destroyed the banquet." Cecilia let out a long, frustrated sigh. "Who could have predicted that simply inviting him would lead to this?" she muttered. But there was still hope flickering behind her words. "He's strong. He'll pull through this no matter what. That's just who Theo is." Her gaze drifted towards the window, as if looking out could bring him back. "Come back safely, Theo," she whispered, her hope unwavering. Inside the carriage, Theo sat silently, watching the city pass by through the small window. His expression was distant, his mind already working through the next steps. "It's been a while since I've been here," he murmured to himself, as the grand tribunal came into view, towering and forbidding. The structure loomed large, an imposing monument to justice. But Theo wasn't shaken. He was calculating. "After everything at the banquet, this won't end with just imprisonment. They're taking me to trial," he thought grimly. "Bringing Ragnar's heir before the tribunal. They want to challenge my right as successor." The knights yanked open the carriage door, barking at Theo to get out. He complied, his face still locked in that same confident grin. He could see through their intentions. "They want to crush me completely," he mused, stepping onto the stone path. But they've no idea. They're only playing into my hands. His grin widened as they escorted him towards the massive doors of the tribunal. "Present the accused," one knight called out, his voice carrying across the grand hall as the heavy doors swung open. Theo stepped inside, his eyes sweeping the chamber. Before him, figures sat in elevated thrones, their gazes cold and piercing. This was the moment, he thought, feeling the adrenaline course through his veins. Among the figures, Theo recognized two faces: Julius, captain of the white-armored dragon cavalry, and Ed Trovian, members of the 9 Dragons, the protectors of Ragnar's legacy. Their presence alone spoke volumes about the severity of the situation. In his past life, Theo might have buckled under the pressure, but today he stood firm. His eyes locked on the figure at the center, Osa Ragnar, Lady of the Plum Blossom Palace, known far and wide as the Sword Dragon. Her title commanded respect. Beside her sat Wolfgang Ragnar, the head counselor, an elder with a reputation for his ruthless judgment.